The Valraki were a race of conquerors, proud and technologically advanced beyond most in the galaxy. They saw themselves as the rulers of every world they set their eyes on, believing their technology granted them the right to dominate lesser species. Commander Vorthar, tall and imposing with his gleaming armor, stood on the bridge of the Valraki mothership, gazing down at Earth. To him, it was a backwater planet, insignificant in the grand scheme of things, inhabited by weak, primitive creatures who had barely scratched the surface of space travel. Humans, he muttered to himself, disdain dripping from his voice. They'll be easy to subdue. Lieutenant Skrell, a sharp-eyed officer with a knack for sensing things others missed, approached his commander cautiously. "Commander, I've been monitoring some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface, specifically from the forests. They don't match anything we've seen from a technologically primitive species." Vorthar waved his hand dismissively. "You're overthinking, Skrell. They're probably just natural phenomena, nothing we can't handle." "But sir, the patterns—" "Enough," Vorthar barked. "Prepare the landing party. We'll investigate these forests and take what's useful. If they pose any threat, we'll eliminate it." Within minutes, a sleek Valraki scout ship descended from the mothership, cutting through Earth's atmosphere like a knife through butter. It touched down deep within one of Earth's most untouched rainforests, a sea of green stretching as far as the eye could see. The Valraki warriors, clad in their advanced exosuits, stepped out cautiously, scanning the area for threats. "Commander, I'm picking up those energy readings again," Skrell said, his voice tense. "They're stronger now." Vorthar, his mandibles clicking in irritation, motioned for the team to move forward. "Let's see what all the fuss is about." As they pushed deeper into the forest, the air became thicker, more oppressive. The trees seemed to loom over them, and the strange, pulsing energy signatures Skrell had detected began to intensify. Vorthar noticed something odd. There were strange symbols carved into the bark of trees, glowing faintly in the dim light. Vines pulsed with a faint energy that resonated with their sensors. "Commander, these plants, they're not normal," Skrell said, his voice barely above a whisper. Before Vorthar could respond, the forest came alive. Vines lashed out from the undergrowth, wrapping around the legs of the Valraki warriors, pulling them down with terrifying force. The trees groaned and shifted as if they had a will of their own, their branches moving with unnatural precision. "What is this?" Vorthar growled, struggling against the vines tightening around him. He activated his energy blade, slicing through the plants, but for every vine he cut, two more took its place. Skrell's voice was panicked. "Commander, we need to retreat. This is no ordinary forest." As the Valraki struggled, the air shimmered, and a figure stepped out from the shadows. It was a human, a tall man with sun-kissed skin, his eyes glowing with an eerie light. He wore simple clothing made of natural fibers, yet there was something undeniably powerful about him. "Welcome to Earth," the man said, his voice calm and steady. "We've been expecting you." Vorthar's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Who are you?" The man smiled, though it was not a comforting expression. "My name is Ethan Cade. I am a guardian of this forest, and you, Valraki, have trespassed on sacred ground." Vorthar raised his energy weapon, aiming it at Ethan. "Stand down, human, or I will destroy you." But Ethan remained unfazed, his glowing eyes locking onto Vorthar's. "You can try," he said softly, "but the forest is not something you can conquer. It is alive, and it will defend itself." As if in response to his words, the trees seemed to grow taller, their branches creaking ominously. The vines tightened their grip, and the Valraki warriors began to cry out in pain as their suits malfunctioned. "Commander," Skrell shouted, his voice strained. "We need to get out of here, now." Vorthar snarled in frustration. This was not how he had imagined their first encounter with humans. They were supposed to be weak, primitive, but this was something else entirely. "Retreat," he ordered, and with great effort, the Valraki began to fall back towards their ship, the forest seeming to close in around them, eager to consume its trespassers. As they stumbled back towards the clearing, Ethan Cade's voice echoed in their ears, a final warning. "Leave now, Valraki, you have no place here." Vortha glared at the human, fury burning in his eyes. "We'll return," he promised, his voice cold and threatening. "And next time, we will burn this forest to the ground." Ethan's glowing eyes dimmed slightly, a sadness crossing his face. "You don't understand, Commander. You won't be fighting me. You'll be fighting the planet itself." The Valraki managed to reach their ship and take off, but as they ascended, the forest below seemed to pulse with an ancient, unspoken power. Vortha clenched his fists, already planning his next move. This was no ordinary world, and if the Valraki were to conquer it, they would need more than just brute force. They would need to understand its secrets. Back aboard the Valraki mothership, Commander Vortha's anger festered. The entire operation had been a disaster. How could a primitive world like Earth, one populated by weak, barely evolved creatures, possess such a defense? The forest, it was alive, and that human, Ethan Cade, was not just an ordinary man. There was power in him, and Vortha despised the thought of being outmatched by a species he considered inferior. The bridge was quiet as the Valraki officers waited for their commander's next move. Lieutenant Skrell approached cautiously, aware of Vortha's mood. "Commander, we need to re-evaluate. The energy readings from the planet suggest something far beyond what we anticipated. Perhaps it would be wise to..." Vortha cut him off with a sharp wave of his hand. "Enough. You think I will be cowed by a few vines and a human with glowing eyes? We are the Valraki. We do not retreat. We conquer." "But, Commander," Skrell continued, his voice low, "the forest, it's not just a place. It's a living entity. And that human, Ethan, he's connected to it in ways we don't understand. If we push forward without understanding this force, we could face catastrophic losses." Vortha's mandibles clicked in frustration. He hated being reminded of their failure. But Skrell's words gnawed at him. What had happened down there wasn't normal, and the Valraki couldn't afford to underestimate their enemy again. "Fine," Vortha growled. "We'll prepare another strike. But this time, we'll bring more firepower. We'll burn that forest and extract whatever energy it holds. And if that human gets in our way, we'll eliminate him." As preparations for the second assault began, Vortha couldn't shake the feeling of unease creeping into his mind. The planet felt different. It wasn't like any other world they had conquered. The energy, the power, it felt ancient, as though the very ground beneath the forests was infused with life. But he pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the logistics of the attack. The Valraki fleet, composed of advanced starships equipped with devastating firepower, moved into position. The plan was simple: bombard the forests from orbit, weaken its defenses, and then land with a massive ground force to finish the job. It was a tactic that had worked countless times before. As the fleet prepared for the assault, something strange happened. On the ship's sensors, the energy signatures from the planet spiked sharply, then stabilized. It was as though the Earth was reacting to their presence. The anomaly didn't go unnoticed by Lieutenant Skrell. "Commander, the energy readings have intensified. I believe the planet is aware of us." Vortha turned to Skrell, irritation flashing across his features. "You're saying the planet itself is reacting to our fleet?" "I don't know what else it could be, sir. But whatever is happening down there, it's not just random energy fluctuations." Before Vortha could respond, an alert flashed across the bridge. A small ship was approaching their position from the planet's surface. It wasn't Valraki, nor was it a human craft. It seemed organic, as if it was grown from the very trees of the forest. As it drew closer, the image on the viewscreen became clear. Standing at the helm of the ship was none other than Ethan Cade. "He's coming here." Vortha growled in disbelief. "Prepare weapons. I want that ship obliterated." But before the order could be carried out, Ethan's voice echoed through their communications system. It wasn't transmitted through conventional means, no radio waves, no encrypted signals. It was as if he was speaking directly into their minds. Commander Vorthar, Athan's voice was calm, but there was an underlying power to it. I have come to offer you a warning. If you proceed with your plans to attack the forest, you will unleash forces far beyond your control. Vorthar sneered. You think your threats scare me, human? You may have caught us off guard once, but this time we're ready. Your forest will burn, and we will take what is ours. Athan's expression didn't change. You don't understand, Commander. Earth is not just a planet, it is alive. And the forest you seek to destroy is part of something much larger, a network of life that connects everything. If you attack, you will be fighting more than trees and plants. You will be fighting the will of the planet itself. Skrell's eyes widened, but Vorthar scoffed. Enough of this nonsense. You talk of magic and superstition. We are the Valraki, the masters of technology. Your primitive world stands no chance against us. Athan's gaze sharpened, and for the first time there was a hint of steel in his voice. This isn't magic, Commander. It's life. And if you choose to go to war with it, you will lose. With that, the organic ship turned and descended back toward Earth, vanishing into the dense canopy of the forest. For a long moment, the bridge was silent. Skrell looked to Vorthar, his mind racing with questions. Commander, maybe we should consider. No, Vorthar said sharply, cutting him off. We attack at dawn. Let this guardian see the true power of the Valraki. Skrell said nothing more, though doubt lingered in his mind. Athan Cade's warning had been clear, and the forest had already shown them that this planet was different, but Vorthar's pride was too great to back down now. As the fleet moved into position, the skies above Earth darkened. The Valraki were ready to unleash their firepower, but the forest below pulsed with an ancient, quiet strength, preparing for the inevitable conflict. The war between the Valraki and Earth was about to begin, and Athan Cade stood ready, knowing that this battle would determine the fate of not just the forest, but the entire planet. The early morning light barely pierced through the thick canopy of Earth's rainforest as the Valraki fleet hovered ominously above, ready to launch its full assault. Commander Vorthar stood on the bridge of his mother ship, his mandibles clicking in anticipation. His fleet was poised to rain destruction down upon the forest, and this time they would show no mercy. Begin the bombardment, Vorthar ordered coldly. Valraki warships hummed to life, their advanced weapon systems charging. Energy cannons glowed brightly, preparing to unleash a destructive wave across the forest. The ground forces below readied themselves as well, preparing to land once the forest had been cleared of its mysterious defenses. But just as the first blast was about to be fired, the forest reacted. The moment the Valraki fleet began its assault, the earth below seemed to tremble. The forest stirred with purpose, as if every tree, every vine, every blade of grass was connected to a singular consciousness. The energy pulses from the trees intensified, their once faint glow now blazing brightly, sending waves of raw power surging upward toward the Valraki ships. The first shot from the fleet never reached the ground. Instead, it dissipated in mid-air, absorbed by a massive surge of electromagnetic energy emanating from the forest. The Valraki ships faltered, their systems blinking erratically. Commander, something's interfering with our weapons. Skrell shouted over the chaos. We can't lock on to any targets. Vorthar slammed his fist onto the control panel. Increase power. Fire again. Another volley of energy blasts was unleashed, but again, the forest responded. Massive trees, their roots deep within the earth, glowed with an eerie luminescence as they absorbed the incoming fire. The energy was harmlessly dissipated, causing no damage to the forest below. Instead, the power fed back into the earth, fueling the life force of the planet. The ground forces, having landed in small clearing zones, encountered the full wrath of the forest. Vines shot up from the ground, wrapping around Valraki's soldiers, dragging them into the dense undergrowth where they vanished without a trace. The air buzzed with unseen power, and the forest seemed to whisper warnings, though none of the Valraki understood. Ethan Cade stood in the heart of the forest, his connection to the planet now fully awakened. His body pulsed with the same energy that flowed through the trees and vines. He could feel the Valraki's fear, their confusion, and their desperation. They had underestimated the planet, thinking their technology was superior, but now they were beginning to realize that Earth's strength didn't lie in machines or weapons, it lay in life itself. "You cannot win this, Vorthar," Ethan whispered to himself, though his voice echoed through the forest, carried on the wind. "You're fighting against something far older and more powerful than you can imagine." As if in response, the forest surged with new vigor. Massive roots erupted from the ground, toppling Valraki ground vehicles and war machines. Their advanced armor proved useless against the relentless assault of nature. Soldiers tried to fight back with energy weapons, but their blasts were absorbed by the trees or deflected by the vines. They were being swallowed whole by the forest, one by one. Skrell's voice crackled over the ship's comms. "Commander, our forces are being decimated. We need to pull back." But Vorthar was beyond reasoning. His pride and rage blinded him to the reality of the situation. "No," he roared. "We will not be defeated by plants. Continue the assault." Inside the mothership, alarms began blaring. The electromagnetic interference caused by the forest had reached critical levels. Systems started to shut down one by one, leaving the Valraki fleet vulnerable. On the ground, the Valraki soldiers were in full retreat, their weapons ineffective, their morale shattered. Amid the chaos, Ethan Cade appeared once again, stepping out from the shadows of the trees to confront the remaining Valraki forces. "You were warned," Ethan said, his voice calm, though it carried an undeniable power. "The forest doesn't want war, but it will protect itself. Leave now, and you will be spared." Vorthar, watching from the mothership's bridge, saw the human through his viewfinder. His eyes narrowed with hatred. "Target him," he ordered. "Kill that human." A volley of energy blasts rained down toward Ethan, but the forest shielded him. Massive trees bent and twisted to block the attacks, their bark absorbing the blasts. The energy that should have obliterated Ethan instead dissipated harmlessly into the air. Ethan raised his hand, and the forest responded. Vines, roots, and branches surged upward, lashing out at the Valraki ships hovering above. One by one, the ships began to lose altitude, their systems failing as the planet's life force overwhelmed their technology. Skrell's voice was frantic now. "Commander, we're losing control. Our ships are being disabled. We need to retreat before it's too late." For a moment, Vorthar hesitated. He had never retreated from a battle, never admitted defeat. But as he watched his fleet falter and crumble, he realized there was no victory to be had here. The Valraki were not fighting a simple enemy, they were fighting the will of a living planet. "Order the retreat," Vorthar said through clenched teeth, his voice filled with bitter rage. "Get us out of here." As the Valraki ships began to pull back, Ethan Cade watched them go, his expression calm but resolute. The forest around him began to settle, the energy it had unleashed slowly dissipating. The trees returned to their natural stillness, the vines retreating back into the earth. "You were given a chance to learn," Ethan murmured to the retreating fleet. "You chose violence. Remember this lesson." As the last of the Valraki ships vanished into the sky, the forest stood victorious, its ancient power reaffirmed. But Ethan knew this was not the end. The Valraki would not give up so easily. They would return, and next time, they might be more prepared. But so would Earth. The Valraki fleet limped back into orbit, their ships battered and systems failing. Commander Vorthar paced the bridge, his mandibles clicking in frustration as reports of their losses streamed in. The ground forces were nearly wiped out, the remaining soldiers retreating with heavy casualties. The power of Earth's forest was undeniable now, a force they couldn't overcome with brute strength. But Vorthar wasn't ready to admit defeat. Lieutenant Skrell, his voice steady but cautious, approached Vorthar. Commander, we've lost nearly half our fleet's operational capacity. The forest's energy signatures are interfering with our systems on a level we've never encountered. We need to reconsider our strategy. Vortha stopped pacing and fixed his piercing gaze on Skrell. Reconsider? We cannot afford to retreat now. We've come too far. Earth has what we need, and I will not leave empty-handed. Skrell hesitated, choosing his words carefully. The forest isn't just a barrier, Commander. It's alive in ways we didn't anticipate. We need to understand what we're dealing with before launching another attack. Vortha's fist slammed onto the control console. Understanding is not what we do, Skrell, we conquer. And if we need to reduce that forest to ashes, so be it. But even as Vortha spoke, he couldn't ignore the gnawing doubt creeping into his mind. The human, Ethan Cade, had been a mystery. His connection to the planet and its ability to defend itself was something far beyond the Valreki's understanding of warfare. Yet Vortha's pride would not let him back down. As Vortha was about to issue new orders, the ship's sensors flared to life. An anomaly was detected, a massive surge of energy coming from deep within the forest. This time, it wasn't just a defensive pulse. It was something more, something far stronger. Skrell's fingers danced across the controls. Commander, the planet is reacting. The energy readings are off the charts. It's as if the forest is drawing power from the very core of the Earth. Before Vortha could respond, the ship lurched violently. Systems began to shut down one by one as the energy pulse from the planet reached them. The ships that had managed to retreat into orbit were now caught in a maelstrom of gravitational and electromagnetic anomalies. The fleet was being dragged toward the planet, their engines failing to keep them in stable orbit. All ships are losing control. Skrell shouted over the alarms. We're being pulled into the atmosphere. Vortha's eyes widened in disbelief as he watched his once mighty fleet spiraling toward Earth. One of the ships, a massive dreadnought, erupted into flames as it entered the upper atmosphere, breaking apart before crashing into the ocean with a fiery explosion. Another followed, plunging into the thick jungle, sending plumes of smoke into the sky. Eject. Get the crew to escape pods. Vortha barked, his voice filled with panic for the first time. We need to get to the surface. As the mothership's systems failed, Vortha and Skrell scrambled toward the escape pods, launching themselves toward Earth just before the ship was torn apart by the planet's powerful forces. The pods descended toward the surface, their protective shells barely holding together as they passed through the dense atmosphere. Vortha's pod landed roughly in the heart of the rainforest, the impact shaking him to the core. The canopy above was thick, blocking most of the sunlight, and the forest floor was alive with sounds of nature, though now, those sounds seemed more like whispers of warning. Vortha stumbled out of the pod, his head pounding, his suit sparking with damage. As he looked around, he realized they had landed in the heart of the forest, the very place they had tried to destroy. The forest, though calm on the surface, thrummed with an ancient, powerful energy, watching their every move. Skrell landed nearby, limping out of his own pod, his face pale with the realization of where they were. Commander, we're in the middle of the forest. We're surrounded. Before Vortha could respond, a voice rang out from the shadows. You didn't listen. Ethan Cade stepped forward, emerging from the trees like a ghost. His eyes glowed faintly, the same eerie light that had marked him as something more than human. He seemed almost calm, though there was a deep sadness in his expression. You brought war to a place that only wanted peace, Ethan said, his voice steady but firm. Now the planet has decided to defend itself. Vortha, bruised and battered, straightened himself, his pride still intact despite the crushing defeat. You think this is overhuman? You think this forest can stop us? The Valraki will rise again, and next time we'll be ready. Ethan shook his head, his expression softening with pity. You still don't understand. This isn't about your weapons or your technology. Earth is alive, and now it knows what you are. Skrell, still cautious but understanding more than his commander, stepped forward. Ethan, is there a way to stop this? To end the conflict without further destruction? Ethan's gaze shifted to Skrell, a hint of hope flickering in his eyes. There's always a way, Lieutenant, but it requires humility. You came here to take, but Earth doesn't belong to anyone. You must learn to coexist with it, or it will destroy you. Vortha snarled, stepping forward. We do not coexist, we conquer. Ethan's eyes flashed with a sudden intensity. Then you will fall. This planet is more than you can comprehend. You've seen only a fraction of its power. Continue down this path, and the Valraki will be no more. As Vortha prepared to lash out, the ground beneath them trembled. The forest responded to Ethan's presence, vines and roots rising from the earth, not in aggression, but as a warning. The planet's energy was all around them now, palpable, and it was clear that any further action against it would lead to their end. Skrell, realizing the gravity of the situation, placed a hand on Vortha's arm. Commander, we need to stop. We've lost too much already. Vortha's eyes burned with fury, but even he couldn't deny the truth. They had been utterly defeated by a force they didn't understand. With a low growl, he stepped back, his pride wounded, but his survival instinct taking over. Ethan's expression softened again. Leave now, while you still can. Take this lesson with you, and perhaps one day you'll understand. As the Valraki survivors gathered, preparing to retreat into the forest and signal for what remained of their fleet, Ethan watched them with a quiet resolve. The forest had won this battle, but Ethan knew the Valraki would not forget this day. And if they returned, Earth would be ready. The once mighty Valraki fleet had been reduced to wreckage strewn across Earth's surface, its technological superiority rendered useless by the planet's uncanny defense. Commander Vortha and the remaining survivors found themselves deep in the heart of the rainforest, surrounded by a power they neither understood nor could overcome. As the Valraki regrouped, tension hung heavy in the air. The survivors, led by Lieutenant Skrell, tended to their wounded and salvaged what they could from their ruined equipment. Every sound of rustling leaves or distant animal cries put them on edge, a constant reminder that the forest itself seemed to be watching, waiting for their next move. Commander Vortha paced angrily, his frustration mounting. The Valraki had never been brought so low by what he considered a primitive planet. But here, in the depths of this alien forest, even he couldn't deny the fear gnawing at his core. The human Ethan Cade had shown him the truth. Earth was no ordinary planet, and its forests were no simple wilderness. They were alive, connected to a force that defied everything the Valraki knew about power. We must contact what's left of the fleet, Vortha growled, his voice thick with anger. I will not leave this planet empty-handed. We will rebuild, and when we return, we will burn this place to the ground. Skrell, watching Vortha with a mixture of frustration and understanding, finally stepped forward. Commander, we can't afford another conflict. We've already lost too much. The forest, this planet, is beyond anything we can fight with weapons. Perhaps it's time we listen. Vortha spun on him, his mandibles clicking with fury. Listen, you want us to bow down to these humans and their magic forest? Never. We are the Valraki. Skrell, for the first time, stood his ground. No, Commander. We are survivors now. And if we continue down this path, there will be no Valraki left. The planet has given us a chance to leave. If we take it, we might live. If not, we will be wiped out. The two locked eyes, Vortha's rage boiling over, but the reality of their situation pressing in from all sides. Finally, Vortha lowered his gaze, the weight of defeat settling on his shoulders. Fine, he muttered bitterly. We leave. But this isn't over. We will return, and when we do, we will be prepared. Just as Vortha spoke, Ethan Cade appeared once again from the shadows of the forest, his presence both eerie and calm. His eyes still glowed faintly, a reflection of the forest's power coursing through him. The Valraki soldiers instinctively reached for their weapons, But Skrell held up a hand, signaling for peace. "Ethan," Skrell began cautiously, "we've made our decision. We will leave." Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "That is wise. Earth doesn't seek conflict, but it will defend itself if threatened. You've seen the forest's power. Now, take that knowledge back to your people." Vortha stepped forward, his pride still smoldering beneath the surface. "You think this is a victory, human? We will return, and next time, we will be stronger." Ethan's gaze was steady, unflinching. "You're welcome to try. But understand this. Earth is more than just a planet. It is alive, and it will always fight back. Next time you might not be so lucky." Vortha snarled but said nothing more, knowing that his words held no weight in the face of such power. As the Valraki prepared to leave, Ethan turned his attention to Skrell, sensing in him a different spirit. "You understand, don't you? This isn't about domination. It's about balance. Earth isn't your enemy. But if you come here again with the intent to conquer, you will lose." Skrell nodded slowly. "I understand. We weren't prepared for what we found here. But maybe someday we can learn from it." Ethan's expression softened. "If that day comes, Earth will welcome you." With that, the Valraki began their retreat, making their way through the dense forest toward a clearing where they could signal for what remained of their fleet to extract them. The forest seemed to part for them, as if allowing them to pass, though its presence was still felt in every rustle of leaves and creak of the trees. As they walked, Skrell couldn't help but glance back at the towering trees, their massive branches casting long shadows over the retreating Valraki. There was a strange beauty in the forest's power, a kind of ancient wisdom that he had never encountered before, and for the first time he wondered if the Valraki had been wrong all along. Maybe there was more to strength than technology and weapons. Maybe there was something to be learned from a planet like Earth, something that could change the future of their entire race. The journey through the forest was long and silent, each Valraki warrior lost in their own thoughts. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but instead, they had been humbled, defeated by a force they couldn't comprehend. Now, as they made their way toward the edge of the forest, they knew they were leaving with far more than they had expected, though not in the way they had hoped. When they finally reached the clearing, the remnants of the Valraki fleet were waiting for them. The survivors boarded the ships, their numbers far fewer than when they had arrived. As the ships lifted off, breaking through the atmosphere and into space, the forest below remained still, a silent witness to the conflict that had just ended. On the bridge of the extraction ship, Vortha stood silently, watching the planet recede into the distance. His pride had been wounded, but his determination to conquer had not faded. One day the Valraki would return, and when they did, they would be ready. But deep down, even Vortha couldn't ignore the small seed of doubt that had taken root. Could they ever truly defeat a world that was more than just dirt and trees? A world that was alive. As the Valraki fleet departed, Earth remained as it always had, strong, ancient, and connected to forces that no one, not even the Valraki, could fully understand. As the Valraki fleet made its retreat from Earth's atmosphere, Commander Vortha stared out at the planet from the extraction ship's viewport, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Defeat was something the Valraki had never accepted easily, but this loss, against a force that wasn't technological but natural, gnawed at him. The forest, the human Ethan Cade, and Earth's strange, living energy had shaken his faith in the Valraki's perceived dominance over the galaxy. Lieutenant Skrell, standing beside him, broke the silence. "Commander, the fleet is damaged, but we still have enough resources to recover. We should regroup and strategize before making any further decisions about Earth." Vortha turned towards Skrell, his face etched with frustration. "Strategize for what? We've been humiliated by a planet. This isn't how it was supposed to go." Skrell, calmer now than he had been since their arrival, spoke softly. "Perhaps it's time to change our approach. We came to conquer, and we failed. Maybe, instead of treating Earth like an enemy, we can learn from it." Vortha's mandibles clicked in irritation, but there was a flicker of realization in his eyes. Learn from it? How can we learn from a primitive world that barely mastered space travel? Skrell met his gaze firmly. Because they understand something we don't. They have a connection to their planet, to nature, that we've overlooked in our pursuit of technology. Maybe that's where their strength lies, not in their machines, but in their understanding of life itself. Vortha considered this for a moment, his pride battling with the logic in Skrell's words. The Valraki had always believed that technological superiority would lead them to ultimate victory, but Earth had shown them something different. The humans, especially Ethan Cade, had a symbiotic relationship with their environment that gave them a power the Valraki couldn't replicate with machines. As the fleet left Earth's orbit, Ethan Cade stood in the heart of the forest, watching the ships disappear into the sky. His connection to the planet's energy had deepened during the battle, and now he could feel the pulse of the Earth beneath his feet, steady and strong. The planet had defended itself, but had also shown mercy. Ethan hoped the Valraki would take that mercy and leave in peace, but he knew that might not be the end of it. Days passed, and life on Earth began to return to normal. The forest healed itself quickly, the damage caused by the Valraki's invasion fading as the trees, vines, and plants regrew. Ethan remained vigilant, knowing the Valraki could return at any time, but for now, peace had settled over the rainforest. To his surprise, several weeks later, a single Valraki ship returned to Earth, not in force, but alone, landing quietly in the same clearing where the initial conflict had begun. Ethan approached cautiously, unsure of the Valraki's intentions, but the forest gave no sign of danger. The ship's door opened, and from it emerged Lieutenant Skrell, alone and unarmed. He walked toward Ethan with measured steps, his multifaceted eyes scanning the forest around them, wary but not hostile. Ethan stood still, waiting for him to speak. "Ethan Cade," Skrell said, his voice firm but respectful. "I come in peace." Ethan's glowing eyes narrowed slightly, but he gave a small nod. "You're brave to return here alone, Skrell. Why are you here?" Skrell took a deep breath. "We, have come to ask for an alliance. The Valraki cannot defeat your planet. We've learned that, but we don't want to be your enemies. There is much we could learn from you and from this world. I've come to propose cooperation." Ethan studied Skrell carefully. There was no deception in his words, only a genuine curiosity and a desire for something different than the endless cycle of conquest the Valraki had been known for. "An alliance?" Ethan repeated, his tone cautious. "What kind of alliance?" Skrell hesitated, then spoke with sincerity. "Our people are proud, too proud, maybe, but what we encountered here changed us. I believe that, together, the Valraki and the humans could benefit from each other's knowledge. We have technology, but you have something more. A connection to life that we don't understand but want to learn." Ethan considered Skrell's offer. It wasn't what he had expected from the Valraki, especially after their aggressive attack on Earth. But something in Skrell's tone told him that this was more than a simple request. It was the beginning of a transformation for the Valraki. They had come to realize that dominance wasn't the only path forward. "The forest doesn't forgive easily," Ethan said slowly, "but it's willing to listen. If your people truly want to learn from us, then maybe there's a way we can work together. But the days of conquest are over. Earth won't tolerate another invasion." Skrell nodded. "I understand. We don't seek to conquer anymore. At least I don't. I can't speak for all of my people, but I'm willing to advocate for peace." Ethan extended his hand, the glow of the forest's energy still radiating faintly from him. Skrell hesitated for only a moment before accepting the gesture, their hands meeting in a symbol of a new beginning. "This could be the start of something better," Ethan said, his voice carrying the weight of both warning and hope. "For both our worlds." Skrell's expression softened slightly. "I hope so." As the Valraki ship lifted off once more, this time leaving with the promise of a peaceful future, Ethan returned to the heart of the forest. The trees, the vines, The very ground seemed to hum with approval, as if the planet itself had recognized a shift in the Valreki's intentions. The forest would always be there, ready to defend itself and the humans who called it home. But now, for the first time, there was the possibility of a future where Earth and its protectors wouldn't stand alone against the stars. Perhaps through understanding and cooperation, they could create a new kind of alliance, one that respected both the power of nature and the strength of technology. Cade, guardian of Earth, smiled as the sun dipped below the horizon. The Valraki had learned their lesson, and now a new chapter had begun, one built on respect, balance, and the fragile hope of peace between worlds.